Cyberpunk 2077, rating 88, developer, CD Projekt Red, subgenre, role-playing shooter, release, December 10th, 2020, Cyberpunk 2077 won back the hearts of countless people last year. After the difficult release, some major patches as well as the outstanding Netflix series Edgerunners gave the game completely new player records. Cyberpunk 2077 is a noticeably better game in early 2023, with new quests, weapons, transmog features, but it has retained the strengths of 2020, of course. You should play Cyberpunk 2077 if you A, logically like the cyberpunk genre, that is, dystopian sci-fi metropolises with body augmentations, ultra-capitalism, and transhumanist cyberspace fantasies, if you B, want to experience a really well-written story, and C, don't expect too deep role-playing mechanics. Because yes, Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't shine 100% in any gameplay discipline, aside from driving, shooting, or all the skills you can upgrade. But that doesn't mean that the game isn't fun. Quite the opposite. When you're scurrying through the alleys of Night City as a sneaking cyberspace ninja, stabbing enemies from behind with your blades and directing turrets against the enemies via hack, that feels pretty good. Enderal, Forgotten Stories. Rating 89, developer, sure, A, subgenre, Skyrim mod, release February 14th, 2019. Enderal is a so-called total conversion to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The game thus takes the technology of Skyrim as a basis to build a completely new, incredibly good role-playing game on it. With an exciting story of its own, unique characters, reworked combat, and RPG mechanics. The mod project creates an epic that doesn't have to hide from the original Skyrim. You can now effortlessly download the total conversion via Steam for free if you own Skyrim. Also, the game was recently expanded with a story DLC called Forgotten Stories. And that's why it ended up in these charts here. Since Enderal costs nothing, we recommend every Skyrim owner to give the game a try. Enderal is primarily aimed at RPG fans who care more about a good story than anything else. The development team, which originally consisted mostly of students, creates a fantasy universe that doesn't shy away from serious topics, but doesn't lose its magic over them either. Path of Exile. Rating 90, developer, Grinding Gear Games, subgenre, action RPG. Release, January 23rd, 2013. Diablo 3, not gritty enough, the removal of skill trees and unforgivable sin? Then Path of Exile is just the alternative. In many ways it feels more like Diablo 2 than its official successor. As an outcast, we are banished to the cursed continent of Rayclast, where we breed our heroes up to become virtuoso monster mechs in the best hack and slay manner. The game relies on enormously deep and multi-layered character development. We screw together our character from a network of over 1,000 passive skills. In 2019, we finally gave Path of Exile the 90 rating it deserved in a review visit. Meanwhile, the game is better than Diablo in almost every way, the story richer, the endgame more varied, the character system mind-blowing. Path of Exile is simply the best action role-playing game you can currently play, and it's free to play. By the way, a sequel was recently announced which, similar to Overwatch, includes the predecessor in the sequel. You can find all information about Path of Exile 2 in our handy overview of the game. You also shouldn't miss the big preview of Path of Exile 2. Hades, rating 90. Developer, Supergiant Games. Subgenre, roguelite. Release, September 17th, 2020. Hades was the best game of 2020 for many people, and that's without any blockbuster bombast. Because the roguelite relies on strengths that don't require a $1 million budget, an incredibly motivating gameplay loop, as well as a captivating story. As Hades' son, you have to fight your way out of the underworld. Sounds simple, but weapons, environments, and story focus change with each new attempt. Hades excels at what makes many roguelites, like Dead Cells, so compelling. Each playthrough plays differently, and dying is part of the fun. Do you like fast-paced action role-playing games with fun combat and creative weapons? And do you like Greek mythology? Then Hades is an absolute must-buy. By the way, a sequel, Hades 2, has been announced in the meantime, but it's still a bit of a wait. Death's Door, rating 90, developer Acid Nerve, subgenre action role-playing game. Released July 20th, 2021. The fact that Death's Door has received 94% positive ratings on Steam is certainly not only due to the fact that you embody a cawing, fluttering cookie in the game, because your crow of death gets involved in an almost flawless action role-playing game. The combat, the visuals, the stories in the game world. Death's Door is an experience you're very unlikely to forget. Many draw the comparison to Dark Souls, because here too it's entirely up to your skill and the right build planning if you want to defeat the numerous enemies. You never fail because the game is bad. You do. Sorry. And if that's not enough gushing for you, then take a look at our GameStar review of Death's Door, as our colleague Elena works out, point by point, what makes Death's Door one of the best action role-playing games of the last few years. Pathfinder 2, Wrath of the Righteous. Rating, 91. Developer, Owlcat Games. Subgenre, old school role-playing game. Release, September 2nd, 2021. Pathfinder 2, or Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous seems like a cliché at first glance. Demons have invaded the land and you have to assemble a hero squad to beat the Hell Pack to a pulp. Yawn. But appearances are deceiving. Pathfinder 2 is a beast of a role-playing game that will keep you entertained for well over 100 hours. The character creation alone, with dozens of classes, backgrounds, and specializations, can keep you entertained for well over an hour. Wrath of the Righteous sends you on a journey full of exciting decisions with complex battles whose intricacies can be learned as diligently as math at university. And, of course, it's immediately obvious that we're talking about an old-school role-playing game here. Pathfinder 2 doesn't care about straightforward comfort, but instead imposes all of its complexity on you without completely abandoning tutorials and tooltips. If you're in the mood for a really deep role-playing game that you can sink into for weeks, then give Pathfinder 2 a chance. You won't forget the journey? Disco Elysium, Director's Cut. Rating 91. Developer Zaum Studio. Subgenre, old-school role-playing game. Release, October 15th, 2019. There hasn't been a role-playing game as creative as Disco Elysium in a long time. Instead of fantasy heroes or sci-fi pistoleros, you embody a mentally distressed detective who can't even remember his own name. You don't carry a mighty flaming sword into battle either, but have to solve a murder case in a fictional coastal town, and not with a gun in your hand, but with brains and the right personality. What right personality means you decide for yourself. Disco Elysium is more of a role-playing adventure game. You have countless conversations, shape the character of your character, make yourself more quick-witted, more analytical, more brutal, and you unravel an incredibly exciting story. Yes, Disco Elysium requires a lot of reading, but if you're willing, you'll experience what we considered to be the best story game ever. Furthermore, Disco Elysium is now much better than it was when it was released. In addition to German texts, the free Director's Cut gives the game many cool new features. There are not only new quests and gameplay elements, but also an English dubbing. Pillars of Eternity 2. Rating 92. Developer Obsidian. Subgenre old school role-playing game. Release May 8th, 2018. The first Pillars of Eternity was a Kickstarter dream come true in early 2015, where major publishers originally gave old-school role-playing games of the Baldur's Gate brand a wide berth. Developer Obsidian, together with the crowdfunding community, sparked a turnaround that continues to this day. So it's no wonder that you can find various gems with retro flair here in the charts with Tyranny, Torment, and Divinity. And now the Pillars, successor Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire is also making it to the top, because Deadfire inherits the strengths of its great predecessor and takes them to a fresh scenario: pirates, shipping, and sea battles. You decide for yourself which path your avatar should take. Freedom of choice is just as important in Deadfire as a complex combat system, innovative locations, and memorable companions. You can also look forward to a reunion with old acquaintances. If you liked Baldur's Gate and were thrilled by Pillars of Eternity, then you'll love Deadfire. Divinity Original Sin 2, rating 93, developer, Larian Games, subgenre, old school RPG, release, September 14, 2017. The top position of our role-playing game top list was held for years by Divinity Original Sin 2. Here, Belgian developer studio Larian refines all the mechanics that already made its predecessor a very good role-playing game. There's a wonderful turn-based combat system that employs arguably the best magic mechanics in the entire genre. We can manipulate the world in a variety of ways with our elemental spells. On top of that, this time the story also scores like no other. There are absolutely crazy background stories for every single character, countless great quests, and Divinity Original Sin 2 has simply become a masterpiece, which can set player records of 86,000 simultaneously active gamers on Steam, and not without reason. If you're looking for another RPG that you can sink 100 hours of your life into with a clear conscience, then Original Sin 2 is by far the best choice at the moment. Especially cool, there was new content for years to come. In 2020, for example, the game's largest DLC to date, the Four Relics of Rivellon expansion, was released. Completely free of charge, it contains new quests, enemies, equipment, and so on. By the way, developer Larian is working on Baldur's Gate 3, which is already doing quite well in the early access test. Elden Ring, rating 93, a developer From Software, subgenre Souls-like, release February 25th, 2022. No game has taken the world by storm in 2022 like Elden Ring. It's no wonder that From Software's masterpiece is the only new contender in the last 5 years to make it into the top 10 of our 300 best PC games of all time. Sure, at its core, it carries on the torch that Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro have lit in the past, but Elden Ring is much, much more than a Dark Souls 4 by any other name. You'll travel around a huge open world that provides you with tools, but doesn't take you by the hand in a big way. If you fight the hard-hitting action battles without preparation and skill, you'll get the same hype as in Dark Souls and Kwup. But it's the world with its countless secrets that drew so many newcomers into the fascination of the Souls games, like no other part of the series before. Where other open worlds permanently wallpaper your mini-map with quest markers and the same 5 activities, Elden Ring is much closer to the legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. A new reward, danger, a new secret, a story snippet, or all of these things at once can be waiting around every corner. It's up to you to decide in which role you want to play Elden Ring and in which direction. The Witcher 3, next general rating, 94, developer CD Projekt Red. Subgenre, open-world role-playing game, release May 18, 2015. Almost 8 years after its release, The Witcher has received a huge next-gen update at the end of 2022, and it actually results in an upgrade. With a score of 94, the spruced-up and expanded version of The Witcher is the best role-playing game we've gotten our hands on in years. Once again, at its core, The Witcher remains The Witcher, of course. You explore a beautiful but gritty open world as the wizard Geralt. Experience one of the best gaming stories of all time, make difficult decisions, and search your way from one cool quest to the next. Combined with the whimsical combat and shallow upgrade options, it makes for one of the most exciting fantasy experiences ever. The next-gen patch also gives the game some upgrades, especially visually. If you want to give even high-end graphics cards a run for their money, there's hardly a better game at the moment. Besides better graphics, there's also a very cool new quest and comfort improvements, like an additional quick travel point, new quick slots for spells, a more atmospheric camera perspective, and fortunately, all of this is even free for anyone who already owns The Witcher 3 in any form.